so many that lost their businesses during that time. Well, hello and welcome for this Friday edition of Fresh Takes at Spotlight Studio. Today we're going to have really awesome author, and actually they're both authors, I believe. One's a writer and one has been an author. And what we do here at Spotlight Publishing is bring people the stories, the wisdom, the expertise to the world in amazing ways through the special gifts, the treasured gifts that I believe every human being has. The goal of this show is to be able to give authors wonderful tips, tools, resources that will keep their books not just out there, but selling and on the shelves into the hands of those who really need to read their messages of encouragement, their wisdom. So with that, I want to introduce our two guests today. We have Kathryn McClatchy and David Knapp. And this is going to be a real interesting conversation. We're going to start with David and then go to Kathryn, and then we'll bring them both back together for an interesting conversation about how Kathryn is speaking about social media. She's a writer and knows social media well for authors, for those that are writing, even blogs and all the different work that everybody's bringing to the world. So Kathryn, we're looking forward to your presentation. I'm going to introduce David now, and I'll see you in a few minutes. All right. So David, I would love to make this awesome introduction to you because you were among my very first authors when I started in the publishing realm, and it's been a while. How long has it been since you published your book?
The book went live on Amazon July 2015.
Wow. But a lot of stuff happened in those years, hasn't there?
That's right.
So David is the father of 8. He's a grandfather to 28. He's been a student of life experiences, most notably that of loss. His passion to help others understand the grieving process with the goal of helping those who experience loss began with the publication of his book, I Didn't Know What to Say. Do you happen to have that book right handy? There, up, raise it up just a little bit. I Didn't Know What to Say, being a better friend to those who experience loss. Thank you, David. And he's extended this into a ministry speaking on grief. He's a sought-after national speaker and a published writer. Dr. Knapp has served as an administrator and professor at 2 Bible schools and currently is a regional public relations director for an international religious nonprofit called Ethnos 360. He grew up on a farm in southern Iowa and has received his undergraduate and graduate studies at Calvary University and Seminary, and was rewarded his doctorate at Peniel Baptist Seminary. He's married to Crystal, who enjoyed a lifelong career in Christian ministry. She's the founder and editor for a support group for marginalized women in our society called Reach Up Magazine. The educational resource published quarterly in English and Spanish and shipped to organizations that work specifically with women on the edge of society for distribution throughout North America. With that, I welcome you, David Knapp.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yes, it's so good to see you too, because it's been a while. Life, all of us get busy, and
indeed.
Your book is really interesting, and I'd like you to share your story of how this book came to be, because I think it's something that so many of us face from time, in the course of life. But you had really tough experience, and it led you to the the gift that you share today, the ministry that you do. Would you mind to share that?
I've had the unfortunate experience of losing 2 wives to cancer. My first wife, after 20 years of marriage, succumbed to breast cancer, and I had 4 teenagers at home at the time. And then a couple of years later, I met a widowed lady who also had 4 teenage children at home, and we got together, blended 8 teenagers, and we lived, we went on and with that life. And after 20 years of marriage, she died of pancreatic cancer. So I've lost 2 wives to cancer and gone through that experience. And our marriages were very, very successful. And so the pain was a challenge. And I had a lot of people question after my second wife died that, oh, wow, I can't imagine what you've been through. But here's the thing, many people would say, I don't know what to say to you. And I thought, well, I do. I know what you could have said. And so I knew then, after speaking at several occasions the spring after my second wife died, that a lot of people were not understanding and wanting to, and people would ask me, what are some of the lessons that you learned about loss that would be beneficial? So I realized, okay, I need to record that. And I actually believe that God spoke to me and says, don't hoard your lessons. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I needed to write down for that. But the thing of it is, I had to determine my audience. There's lots of books on Amazon and other places of individuals sharing their story that would relate to other people who are grieving. And I thought, well, okay, but why would I write my story for other people who are grieving? I realized there was a lot of people that wanted to be a better helper or friend to me during the grieving process, but didn't know how.
We don't know what to say. Yeah, we don't know what to say. Yeah, we distracted, or we're it's awkward. You're afraid to say something that may make that person cry, or just. But how lonely it is on the backside of that for the one that is grieving, because nobody's really reaching out to you.
Exactly, and that's what I realized after 3 weeks. Both experiences, people began to pull away, and kind of thinking, well, okay, that event happened. I'm going to move on. They assume that I am too, and they somehow erroneously feel like, well, I don't want to drag them back into the grieving process that they had the week that his wife died. When in reality, I was just getting started after 3 weeks, that the grieving process was an elongated process that I needed to go through, and it's not something I needed to get over. So I thought, okay, so the target audience in my mind was originally the friends or the helpers of people who are grieving, to help them understand, here's the grieving process, here's what it's like, and therefore here's how you could help them. And it's oftentimes not what people assume, such as, like you just mentioned, the tendency to think, well, I don't want to make them cry. Excuse me, how else am I going to release the hurt that I have if I don't cry? And in fact, there's nothing you could say that would make me feel worse than I did in the grieving process. So that's really not the issue. So what I've done in my book is I have several topics. I tell my story. I talk about losing a spouse. There's another chapter on losing your job. Another one, the biggest one, is on losing a child, moving to a new area, cultural differences. So there, at the end of each chapter, there's a list of about a half a dozen. Better to say this instead of this. Better to say this instead of this. And I've had many people tell me that those lists at the end of each chapter are worth the value of the book, for sure.
Oh, I remember those lists, and it's always kept in mind, because there's it's such an awkwardness, and yet for the person that has lost, it's such a loneliness, because
Right.
after the hubbub of, you know, there's a funeral and there's all the family together, and then everybody goes back their own ways. They got to get back to work. They can't stick around.
Right.
And the actual terrible loneliness and the adjustment to such loss. And it does feel incredibly like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this all by myself? This doesn't work for me.
Right.
So you've gone on, you have gone on to having a ministry that serves, and I know you have a nice, good sized Facebook following. I always get the little notifications coming up, you know, that David's, and you've built quite a team behind it, as far as what you do. But didn't you also go into the prisons and teach on grief?
I've had, as a result of getting going and my circle of influence, being attracted to the message and what I'm doing, yes, I've had opportunities to speak to a variety, for, you know, anywhere from 12 to 5,000 people on the subject of grieving, helping folks understand. And one of those was indeed a very, very large prison in Southern California, that I was able to go and just talk about it. And some of the people that get in line to talk to me afterwards, is an interesting phenomenon for the subject of sharing about emotion and hurt. It's not uncommon for the ones to respond to be dominantly ladies that feel it even more so than men. But when I speak and I share, here's what it was like, here's how I hurt, and here's what I went through, the people in line, there's a drastic increase of men standing in line to talk to me, because it's not common to hear a man share the emotion that I'm able to get across. And
there's such a healthy amount of healing that can come when they actually see that a man can be vulnerable and authentic in how they express themselves, and then will stand up and speak for those that don't realize that there's any kind of support around that, you know. Yeah. And as women, we're always a mess, and we express our emotions quite differently than most men do. Right. And I've had leadership people contact me. For example, in the last year, I've had 2 pastors of churches find me on LinkedIn, and I have a large following there as well, that find me on LinkedIn and call me and say, can we chat? I have no one else to talk to about what I'm experiencing. My wife, in one case, his wife had just died. Another guy had lost his mother and a daughter within the last 6 months. And just oftentimes it is leaders that are the loneliest when it comes to loss. Well, because they're looked up to, and they try to have that front of, I'm strong, I can get through this. Right. But the quiet part behind those quiet hours, when they're not in front of their congregation or not out there leading, is when that's the hardest. Indeed, yeah. And some of the conversations I've had with those 2 pastors were on their time, because some of them were far away, was at like midnight. Yeah, when they're hurting. Yeah, well, it's so remarkable that you continue to lead with this, that you did listen to the calling that you've been able to take. And what I see with so many authors is that it's often the things that were from our darkest hours, that's where we stand up and we lead. We're the impactful influencers in areas where we went through the darkest times, and we would have never realized that would be a calling, you know, but that's what our life would eventually lead to. Yeah, and it's not uncommon for people to turn their messes into ministry. Right. And it's beautiful that way. So what is what are you currently doing? I know you're still speaking, and you mentioned in your bio that you're working for Ethnos 360. What is that?
Ethnos 360 is a missionary sending agency that is dedicated to taking the message of Christianity to people around the planet, 360 degrees around the whole planet. People who have had very little or no exposure to Christianity and the message of God's word, the Bible. And so that puts our missionaries in some of the remotest places on the planet. I've had the privilege of traveling to many of these places and visited probably 20 different tribal bases where we have missionaries. Been in Brazil, in Panama, Papua New Guinea recently. We were there. My wife and I were in Papua New Guinea the year before the pandemic. And so our missionaries locate pockets of ethnic groups. Dominantly, they have their own language that the Bible has never been translated into their language. Wow. And so we go there, and actually our missionaries live in the settings where these people live, learn their language, learn their culture, and then present the message of God's word and God's love.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, for those that are listening, I would encourage you to pick up David's book. It's on Amazon. I didn't know what to say. And then also look up his website, because I think your book is probably front and center right there, where in case they need a link and can't find it. Grief Relief Ministries. If with your ministry, do you speak in front of large like church groups? Where's your reach, and how can we get the word out for you?
Well, Ethnos 360, being a dominantly a foreign ministry, where we don't actually do our work like that in this country and the United States, because there's no pockets of ethnic languages that haven't already had the Bible in the United States. So it's all abroad. So my job for the last many years has been to represent and to inform and even recruit for the ministry that we're doing abroad. And so, pardon me, I have spoken and will do speak sometimes to larger groups, but dominantly what I do is I connect with church leaders and people who are potentially interested in being a part financially with the ministry. And so ethnos360.org is a good place to go to find out more. There's opportunities to get involved, to give, to learn information. There's videos there, or reports of people and the work that we're doing abroad as well. And then with the grief relief, kind of the same thing. I don't do a lot of personal client counseling, but I do talk to individuals, and we'll talk to them for half a dozen times if that's necessary to help them out. But I do seminars, and the seminar run anywhere from 1 hour to 8 hours depending on the setting. I've spoken in front of leadership people. I've spoken to general population and congregation. In about 8 weeks, the end of May, I'm going to be in Missouri speaking at a Saturday all-day men's conference about the book and the grieving process. So yeah, we got that going on. I've also in the process of putting together 2 more books and also a course that can go online for how to grieve. Perfect.
That's beautiful. Well, you serve the world in such an amazing way, and having known you and your wife as friends as well, and we've networked in the same circles, and
right.
I feel so honored to know you and to know the work that you bring, the heart that you bring to the world, and that it's just really amazing. And your family continues to grow. You're a grandpa at 28. That's awesome. And with the 8 kids, because I know all of you kind of all stayed together as far as the growth, from 2 separate marriages, but you were remarkable to blend 8 teenagers at once. That had to have been quite an adventure.
Yeah. Love to tell about it.
You did. That's amazing. I am so delighted that we got to connect this way. We're going to go for a real short break, and I'll bring Kathy on, Kathryn, to talk about social media. I think that you'll pick up some really good points. Then we'll come back together for another conversation. So thank you, David. You're awesome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Right, thank you. Kathryn, I'm happy to, your sound is off, so you want to turn your sound back on, or your mic. There you go. Kathryn.
I didn't want to dance my chair squeaking while David was talking.
Well, it's I'm always kind of holding my breath that my dogs don't decide to bark in the middle of one of these, just like they do that. So I wanted to introduce Kathryn McClatchy. She has written for newspapers and magazines, worked in advertising, marketing, and market research, and taught high school and college composition, rhetoric, and literature. In June of 2006, she suffered the first of many strokes. It changed the course of her life and was the impetus to begin writing fiction and speaking out on behalf of stroke survivors and service dog partners. You're amazing. That you continued, you found where you can shine despite it all. Amazing.
Well, like David was just saying, you take your area where you're hurting and where you're weak and turn it into your ministry.
Yep. Yes, that's what many of us have done. And that's, I had teach a course on becoming an impactful influencer and how to do that. And typically every conversation centers around that deep, dark moment or a series of moments that happened where then you turn it around and make it your strength. So beautiful. In 2012, exactly. Kathryn launched Unleashing the Next Chapter to encourage, educate, enlighten, and entertain through public speaking, group seminars, workshops, private professional coaching, blogging, and small group coaching. Additionally, she teaches and manages social media for individuals and nonprofits and small businesses, as well as writing content and copy. In 2019, she also launched an online community for working writers, also under the umbrella of Unleashing the Next Chapter. In her spare time, she writes mystery and creative nonfiction. How awesome. So tell us some more about you, what the little bit of the backstory, because I know you are very active on social media, and so is your dog,
yes,
your constant companion there, your service dog.
My service dog. So it's interesting. I've been either writing or doing marketing. My education, my experience, all of that is intertwined with the writing, the literature, and marketing. So when I stroked and I was declared disabled, but because of a technicality, if you will, I wasn't eligible for disability for either teacher retirement or through Social Security. So part of my rehab, I had to learn to read and write and speak and walk and talk and everything. One day I'm a college professor, the next day I'm trying to figure out what those black squiggles mean. So that was right about the same time that Facebook went public. And I was still having trouble learning to speak. I did over a year of speech and cognitive rehab twice. Where am I? So since I was having so much trouble speaking, I jumped on the Facebook thing so I could communicate with friends and family. It helped with my hand-eye coordination and learning to read and write. And I got involved with social media that way. So I was kind of on the forefront, but I was using it for rehab purposes more than marketing purposes. And then I started writing fiction because I had years of experience reading and loving reading. And I thought, oh, you know, if there comes that moment when you can't do what you've been trained to do, what would you rather spend your time doing if anyone, you know, wouldn't stop you? Right. And so I started, I thought, oh, I'll be a writer. And like, that's an easy thing, right? No, so not. So the first draft of my first novel was completed, 10 years ago, and it's still being reworked before it's allowed to the public. But meanwhile, I got involved with the writing organizations and writing groups, and I realized that even though I had taught composition, I had taught rhetoric, I knew the ins and outs of writing and narratology and all of this. What writers needed to know was how to market their books, and there was nobody speaking to that. So there were a lot of fabulous published writers who could talk about the craft of writing, but nobody in my circle in Dallas-Fort Worth area was talking about marketing at that time. So I started helping people with their marketing and their social media, and lo and behold, that's what really took off and has turned into my side hustle, which actually is now taking up most of my waking hours.
The side hustle that became the main hustle. Huh?
Yeah, it really has. I still do, most of my work is still on the volunteer side. I manage social media for 3 different writing organizations and 2 large writing events. And in 2019, right before we got shut down with COVID, I was responsible for all the social media marketing and management for BoucherCon, which is an international mystery fan and writers and publishers gathering every year. And we were the 50th anniversary here in Dallas. So it was really cool getting to connect behind the scenes with writers around the world.
That's amazing. And it's such a tribute to you because you didn't give up when after your series of strokes. You kept on trying.
It's a tribute to God's goodness.
Yes.
Because my second stroke, my husband was basically told if I lived through the night, they needed to look into a nursing home because I'd never be functional again independently. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I kind of took the attitude, okay, God saved me for something, you know, not everybody bounces back from strokes. And I had 5, possibly 6 of them, plus heart surgery in the middle of all that. And lo and behold, you know, there's a reason I'm here. So I try to help, you know, where I can with that.
That's beautiful. It's a real tribute to who you are as a person, that you didn't give up, that you kept on trying. I'm sure it was a struggle to get to the point where you could actually read again and to speak clearly again and to really take all that wealth of amazing knowledge that you have and continue to serve the world, bring your light to the world the way you have. So you teach a course now for authors, really, to use social media to get the word out. Let's have a conversation about that. And I'm going to put the scroller down below so you can get the link to actually this course. Let's talk about the course that you've put together.
Okay, so I do workshops. I've done like 1-hour presentations, weekend workshops on social media for authors, how they can use it. And the thing that I want everybody to take away, whether you do my class or not, if you are an author, stop getting on social media just to say, buy my book, or my book's on sale, because that is not marketing. That repels more readers than you're going to attract. So, but the course, what I found was people would come to my workshops and my presentations and they'd be thrilled in the moment, and I'd have them pull out their phones and use the apps and do the stuff. And then a week later, I'm scrolling through social media and none of these writers are using it. And so when I went back and started polling them, I'm like, okay, what's the problem? I gave you the tools, I gave you the techniques, I gave you the strategy. Why aren't you on social media? And the answer was either one, I forgot what you said by the time I got home and my notes didn't make sense, or two, I don't have time for it, or three, I don't know how to make this a habit in my day. So what I have done is created a 90-day intensive course. Each week, we're going to focus on a different aspect of social media. My students are going to be in small groups, and I'm limiting the total to 48 students. I've already got one group filled out. There'll be 4 groups of 12 in which you can work together. You can engage with each other on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever. But I'll give you step-by-step instructions, and you'll have people to encourage you on the social media platform, and I'll show you how you can do it all in 30 minutes or less a day. So if you have 4 to 5 hours a week to do the instruction, the activities, and post on social media, I mean, you're going to get a lot done in those 4 to 5 hours a week for 12 weeks. Hopefully by then, you'll have the habit set up so you can go on your own, because they say it takes 30 days, give or take, to develop a habit. So I want to really lock this in. So in 90 days, we can set some good habits for social media, build a community, build a tribe, and be social.
You know that this is so interesting, because when I launched my book, when I first started in publishing, it's called The Woman I Love, and it was a story of my backstory, which led me to do the work that I'm doing today. And I had a Facebook page, and then the page went into a group, and the group is still strong today. And it's all based on being there and supporting for those that have gone through all, the abuse, whether it's domestic violence or whatever, to really start living again and to really shine. What happened from that social media experience, because I was very active when I was doing that. Publishing's taken me a whole different direction, but from that, when my book was launched, it became a #1 international bestseller. But what came from that was people reaching out, because even in the book, I had links to my Facebook things and my LinkedIn and all of the different places where they could find me. But even men reached out and said, well, thank you. Now I understand my mom, or now I understand my wife, and what they might have, what they had gone through. But then with the Facebook group, if there was people that wanted to go deeper, they could, and we had quite a support system going through there. And then I have watched, so after that book, there was 2 more books, and there was 50 women in those 2 books. It's 25 in each. And the name of that book was We Choose to Thrive. And this was many women telling their stories for the first time. And now I watch what they're doing, and many of them are publishing their own books. Many of them are now coaching. They're doing amazing things. And that's from that first dipping my toe into understanding the world of social media and being an author, all of that. So the reach, I say that we are so fortunate to be living in this time, because even though we've had COVID, even how we've had all these things, we still have all the tools and resources to stay connected and get our message out to the world. But most of us don't understand how to get it done. We think that it just feels monumental to really stay out and stay front and center in social media, and being able to do those kind of things that really, really keep the message alive.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And the thing that, since you published, social media has changed so much.
Oh.
And unless you're involved in it like I am, you don't see all the subtle shifts. So, back 10 years ago, if you were on Facebook, that was enough. You didn't have to do everything else. But now everybody's on Facebook, and you think, well, fine, that's where I'll stay. But the problem is, because there's 1 billion with a B, active users per month, worldwide on Facebook, your post is getting buried. Nobody sees it. So I like to tell my authors that I work with that Facebook is a really good place to take care of your people. And Facebook, the algorithm now gives bonus points, if you will, to groups. So having a Facebook group is a great way to take care of your little tribe, your community, but it's not a good way to find readers. They will not find you on Facebook. You need to be on other platforms, and you need to go where your audience is, right? So we talk a lot about finding your ideal reader and being really focused. And like you said, you set your book for women who survived abuse, but because you focused in on them, other people came in and heard the message. And so that's what I try to get to readers too. You know, a lot of them go, well, I want to be a best-selling author. I got to market to everybody. No, you don't. If you market to everybody, nobody feels special and reads your book. So
that's the key.
That's another thing we're going to talk about.
So that is the key, is that you have to be, the first question I ask my authors when they start working with me is, who is this book for? You know, it's not for everybody, and you can't expect it to be for everybody, because then it'll get lost forever if you're not very specific. So speak to the one, and then the many ones will come together in that. But if you speak directly to that, be very, 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 very mindful of who you're actually speaking to.
And I encourage, especially my fiction writers, all my writers, but especially my fiction writers, you need to do basically a character bio sheet for your ideal reader. You know, what age, where does she shop, what TV shows does she read, you know, how many children, what stage of life, what was her career path, you know, be as specific as you can. And then we know who we're talking to on social media, and all of her friends, family, loved ones will get caught up in that. But if you're not targeting somebody, you're just not going to get anybody.
That's so true. And I think that when we understand that, and a lot of times when, especially a brand new author will come to me and they're still in the writing stages. So we have a huge conversation around the who. You know, the first conversation is about why are you doing this? And then take it to the who is this for, and narrow it down. And then we go in, we actually look on Amazon to see what other kind of books are being published on the same subject matter. Look at what the reviews are saying, not necessarily the 5-star reviews, but the reviews that are between 2 and 4 that are saying, well, I really like this, but they're missing the point here, or I really would like to have seen this, because that helps you to really pick up the pieces and be there to pick up what was lacking in the other books, perhaps. But even if somebody is on the exact same subject as you, only you can bring your message to the world, and only you can bring that bit of attraction to the right person that needs to hear your message.
And to circle back with how you started that, when the writers come to you, they're still writing. It always surprises me that writers don't start their author platform, their online presence, until after they have a book to publish. Well, by then they've missed a big opportunity to build their community, and they're like, well, I don't have anything to sell. Well, you don't have to sell. You're building relationships. You get on social media to be social and to find your people. And those are the people that you want to have a relationship with, that you want to take care of, that you want to encourage and, you know, share some knowledge with, to where when your book is released and ready for sale, those people are going to run out to all their friends and say, look, I've been following this writer for a year. You've got to read this book. You know, that makes marketing so much easier if you're not the one saying, buy my book.
Well, and that is so true. It's kind of funny, because I tell them, usually in our first conversation, is the minute you put pen to paper is the minute you start getting active on your social media and brand yourself on your social media. Don't look different on LinkedIn than you do on Facebook and on Instagram. have at least something that lets them know that this is the same person, that it just keep the branding to where it becomes familiar to them too. Like
The
we know
branding
when
has to be consistent, but the format and the way you speak on each platform is different. And that's something a lot of writers don't understand either. They get on Instagram and they see that little box that says share to Twitter, share to Facebook, and they think, okay, 3 and done. Well, no, it's not, because then your Facebook and your Twitter people think they're eavesdropping on the conversation you're having with your Instagram folks. So make sure that when you're talking on Twitter, you're having a Twitter conversation. When you're being social on Instagram, you're having an Instagram conversation. The formats are different. Logistically, the pictures are formatted differently. The hashtags are different. And a hashtag that works on Instagram may not mean the same thing on Twitter. So a lot of things do not translate. So you, as an author, your branding needs to be consistent, but the way you have those conversations is different. And I used to teach my students, when we're talking about finding your voice, you may have gone out with your friends last night, and today you're talking to grandma. Well, you're going to tell grandma this is what you did. And then, maybe your child's going to ask how your evening went. You're going to tell your child something different because your child understands it differently and doesn't need maybe the information. And then maybe you're talking with your BFF and you're going to give her all the details, right?
All the juicy details.
Yeah, it's not that you're lying or you're being inconsistent. You're just telling people what they are interested in hearing in a way they can handle the information. It took me a long time. When I was in grad school, my dad would call me. He's since passed on, but he would call me and he'd say, so how's it going? What are you learning? And I'd start telling him. Well, he didn't care about narratology and all these, in-depth graduate level things and the authors I was studying ad nauseum. Because we were on the phone, I didn't see his eyes roll back in his head and glaze over. And it took me a long time to realize what Dad wanted to know when he asked that question was, are you happy? Are you being successful? How can I support you in this?
Right.
And so then once I clued in, we had much better conversations.
Very cool. I'd like to bring David back into the conversation because I see him very active on social media, and I'm sure that there's questions popping up and his own experience as to what his experience with social media is. And I know when we worked together, we did a whole video series that was able to be used out on social media, where you answer, it was like the 10 frequently asked questions and the 10 questions people should ask but don't know to ask. And
love that.
Yes, and it's kind of been a really strong basis for opening up a lot of conversations. So David, as you're listening to this, are there any experience or thoughts that you would like to add to the conversation, or even questions for Kathryn?
There's actually two things I noted what she said, that each platform has a different scenario, and I found that to be true. Twitter and Instagram, Instagram tends to be just pictures and a message, but Twitter tends to be just kind of a snippet, whereby with LinkedIn, for example, it's business. And so the things how I communicate on LinkedIn is more in my mind, it's more at an executive level and not necessarily an audience level, whereby some of the other ones, it's like that. So I appreciate what you said about not being generic with all three. I've actually, quite frankly, never done that. I haven't connected all three, so I do one. I mean, it sounds nice for my time effectiveness, but I've never done that. I go to each one individually. Thank you for confirming that. And I didn't realize that the hashtags don't translate. That's a good thing to know.
Yeah, if you set up a hashtag for your book, for instance, you can build that across all social media because you own that hashtag, not like you have proprietary rights to it, but you're the one who uses it predominantly and it comes back to you. So you definitely want to have that across all social media. But you don't want to assume that something that's popular on Instagram is going to mean the same thing on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Right.
And it's interesting that you were commenting about LinkedIn, because through COVID, the vibe, if you will, on LinkedIn has changed, and it has become very much human to human, rather B2B or B2C kind of thing.
Right.
So we need to adapt with that. I actually was just in a Social Media Pro conference yesterday, and one of the speakers was talking at length about how COVID has changed how we use social media, and that's something we need to keep up with as authors.
Right. Now, I didn't know, you just said something that was new to me. Tell me about owning a hashtag. How do you do that?
Okay, so for example, one of the, I keep getting in the wrong space here. One of the authors that I work with has a unique turn of phrase, shall we say. And so when I started my first presentation over hashtags, I was like, oh, I need a good handle for this, a good title. And she said, well, you're just the hash kicker. Now she runs around in red cowboy boots and a red Stetson. That's part of her brand, right? So she said, you're just a hash kicker. And so I kind of own that. So I use hashtag hash kicker, and across all social media, that comes back to me. Becky mentioned I have a social media for my service dog. And that started because half of my Facebook friends were like, tell me everything about the dog, as we were starting the fundraising and the process. And the other half of my friends and family are like, enough about the dog already. So I created it. Gizmo has his own Facebook and Instagram, and hashtag Gizmo_the_SD for service dog. And that's consistent across all social media. So it doesn't matter what platform I'm on, you can find out about Gizmo.
Isn't there a site where you can claim a hashtag, like hashtag something?
It's like titles. There is no copyright on a hashtag. There's no copywriting titles. That's why you have 12 books of the exact same title. So you need to be real careful. Just like businesses, you can't, you have Triangle Media, for example. There's Triangle Media everywhere, and it means all kinds of different things. So you have to be really careful what you name things, that it's not already taken. And then once you start using it, you want to build a following around that so people know that's you.
So it's more about using it with the frequency, and it's always there, and it's also always associated with you.
Right. So, and I also tell authors, once upon a time, book publishers and the marketing people in publishing companies would try to create energy around one book. Now we want to create energy around the author, because you're going to have multiple books, right? So rather than hashtag title of the book, which is always good, do that. But you really want to put on your business card, maybe hashtag what you do, what you're known for. So hash kicker works for me because I kick hashtags. So put that on your business card, on your bookmarks that you print out and give out, on your social media, in the bio section of your Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, that little bio thing, you can put hashtags in there. So if you look at my bio on Twitter, which my handle is at K_McClatchy, you can see that I have social media consultant as a hashtag, because if somebody is looking for a social media consultant, I want them to go to my page. I don't want them to go to a ton of posts. I want them to go to my page and see all that I'm doing. I also have hashtag writer, although that's becoming so watered down. I don't encourage that, and I'm probably changing that as I'm thinking about it aloud. But put what you're known for. Put what you're known for and create a hashtag, just like you do for events, right? When I did the social media for BoucherCon, we used hashtag BoucherCon19, because 2019, that was the event to separate it from all the other BoucherCons. And everything we did with the authors, with the events, with the literacy campaign, all the activities around Dallas that were associated with that, we used that hashtag so people knew where they go. And then when they posted using that hashtag, then I could like and share their stuff, and I could use it to compile their pictures and their comments in our review.
So David would be maybe grief relief, hashtag grief relief or grief relief ministries, grief or
The shorter the
ministries.
better. I like grief relief. I think that's fabulous. So check if it's been used, number one, on the platform that you're most active on. If you're most active on LinkedIn, first check it's not there. And if you're second most active on Twitter, check, that it's not there or what it means. It might already be established and you might want to join in on what's been started, but make sure it means what you think it means.
Awesome. So picking up the conversation from speaking different on different social media platforms, I've used, there's so many different programs. I use eClincher to schedule out all my posts and all of that. And I don't have a lot of time, so I'm actually looking at taking not only your course, but hiring somebody to do what I need to get done because I'm staying busy. Yeah, that's probably you. But,
we've had a conversation.
the eClincher is like, you can say, okay, I want this post to go to LinkedIn. And there's several other platforms that are that way. I want it to go to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube if you have a video. But that doesn't personalize it. That doesn't really, you can send them out separately, but I never gave it much thought as far as speaking differently on each platform.
So here's what I suggest and what I teach. This is, and I'm sure I'm not the only one talking about this, and I'm sure it's not my original idea, but do your longest form first. So if you have a blog post going out this week, your blog post is probably your longest piece of content, right? And then take a couple key sentences out of that and turn those into tweetables. And then maybe there's a paragraph that kind of sums up what you're saying. Put that on your LinkedIn or on your Instagram. And the image that you use with say you have 4 or 5 images in your blog post, we'll use one of those images for Instagram, one of those images for Facebook, one of those images for Twitter. And if you're using Canva as your idiot-proof graphic design tool, it has an option in the pro form, and that's only like, I don't know, $9.99 or $12.99 a month. It's really reasonable. But you can take your graphic, say you did it as a square for Instagram, and you can say resize and tell it to resize to Twitter or resize to, and it does all the work for you, and then you just, finagle it just a smidgen to make it look right. And then you put those in the scheduler. And when you're using a scheduler, make sure that you're giving it a minimum of a day plus 4 hours. I prefer a week plus 4 hours. If you have evergreen content, you don't want to post all of those things at the exact same time, because what happens, we as humans using social media, we sit down at lunch and we scroll through all of our things as quickly as we can, right? So you're going to see David posted all these sites, the exact same message at the exact same time, and then nothing, right, for days, weeks, months, whatever. I don't know how active you are.
That's easy to do.
It is. So by doing it in the scheduler, if you do like a day and 4 hours, you're catching those who check at breakfast are going to see this. Those who check at lunch are going to see that. Those who check after work are going to see this. Those who check after dinner are going to see, or before bed. A lot of people in TikTok right before bed, where we used to watch, the TV comics, sitcoms before bed. A lot of people now are watching TikTok before bed. So, think about where your audience is. If you have an international audience, of course, you want to spread it across the 24-hour period.
Wow.
Does that help? I'm getting blank stares. Did I give you too much?
Yeah. No. I've heard that before, that is, even on Facebook back, several years ago, I realized not everybody comes on Facebook at the same time of day, and if you want more people to see it, you need to post it in the morning and again at night, because you're going to have different audience.
Right. But you also want to keep in mind that people who like you and are intrigued by you are going to go back to your profile and scroll what you've posted maybe over the last day or 2 or 3. I think if you have your Twitter roll or whatever on Instagram does it too on your blog, they see the last 4, 5, 6 posts. So you don't want them to be repeats. You want to have new information. So that's why stagger posting is so important. So you
Okay.
get multiple posts out there, but you get them repeated.
Yeah. Great.
Very, very fascinating. Well, that just pops a lot of more questions in my head as far as, how to get it all done and really what kind of content. Because there's, like for you, David, your book, each chapter is so incredibly filled with good content,
Right.
with really powerful things, that action steps that people can actually utilize, right? And you have like probably a whole year's worth just in your one book, because there's so much good information.
Right. And then there's YouTube. I've got, between 2 and 10-minute videos of me teaching on the subjects.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And you could also share those.
One of the things I would suggest, David, is you're teaching in churches or in front of an audience or whatever. What I've got going right now on my phone is Otter, and it's a transcription tool. So it's taking what we're saying and it's putting it into words that I can cut and paste and use for my social media next week. So this is a great way to develop content very quickly. I'm going to pull my words, and that way I can use it as a blog post. If it's a lot of good content, I can take it apart and use it as tweetables or as Facebook posts, so there's a lot of being part of the invisible disability community. I've found a lot of tools that help me compensate for the things that the stroke, scrambled. But at the same time, those help me be more efficient in doing my business. And those are tips and tricks I can share with my clients.
What's the app again?
Otter, OTTER, like the little furry animal, Otter.
Oh, really? Okay. That's great. Thank you.
It's a wonderful tool. And, you have to go in and edit and revise, of course. But, so often we talk and then, an hour later, it's like, oh, I said something really good. How did I say that again?
Yeah, right.
So this is a great way to develop your content. I do a lot of outlines from these transcriptions, and that we're asked what I need to cover in my presentations or my classes.
Wow. Good.
So, Kathryn, when does your this next class start? For those that are going to be watching this, because I'm going to be sharing this out to all of my authors. But when does your class start, and how
the deadline is next Sunday, the 28th. You must register by then. And it's the first 48 that register. I'm cutting it off because I want to make sure I can give people individual attention. And each of the groups, I'm going to have 4 groups set up of a dozen, and each group has a moderator to kind of be eyes and ears for me. So I want to make sure that there's a lot of networking and a lot of interaction going on in the class, to where you can take that online and feel like you're talking to people on Twitter that or onto LinkedIn that So deadline is the 28th. The class 0 week is the following week, and then the class officially starts April 4th, I want to say, whatever that Monday is. Each week runs Monday through Sunday, and we'll have 12 active weeks. But I threw in a 0 week to make sure everybody's online and comfortable and gets to know each other.
And how much does the course cost?
$30.
$30 is all. My goodness. Wow. We've got to do that.
It's the cheapest thing going, because I really wanted to make sure that authors, because so many authors are working on a shoestring as it is until they get published, and I want to get them in, early.
Awesome. Well, we're just down to the last couple of moments of our time together. So in a wrap up, I would love to just say, super wow. Thank you to both of you. And David, it's just been an incredible pleasure to see you again, because we live across the cities, and since COVID, we're not seeing each other at all. So.
No.
And Kathryn, what you brought to the table today with your insights and the wisdom on social media is something that any of us, whether we're a business owner or an author, we've got a message out to the world. We're an influencer in some way. We're a leader. We need to use social media in a way that will give us reach the hearts of those that need to hear that message. And I think that a lot of us can get overwhelmed with, okay, how do we get this done? How does this happen? And I think
Right.
this course was absolutely perfect for this whole thing. So to both of you, thank you. It's been a pleasure, delight to be with you today. And for those listeners, this is Spotlight Publishing, bringing authors their messages to the world. And each week, every Monday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, our show goes live, and we bring a different guest and a different author each show to showcase and to just show the amazingness that's in our world today. So to both of you, thank you. And for those that have been listening, I know we've been getting some thumbs up and some other things going on. So it's really cool to see. The show is live on E360 TV Fresh Takes. Thank you both.
Thank you.